ask you to check the time. It is not to see how long I am preaching. Go ahead and check the time. Look at your watches, your iPhone, what have you. And I've got it about 17 minutes to 11, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in about 17 minutes here on the east coast of the U.S., it will be the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And it is a time we mark as the signing of the armistice that ended the First World War. Now, it was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, but what really ended were millions and millions and millions of lives. There were over 37 million civilian and military casualties from the First World War. Some estimates have put it as high as 40 million. It's considered one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Why was it so deadly? Well, at the turn of the last century, armies had been trained the same way their fathers had been trained, the same way their fathers would have recognized. But the technology of war had progressed with deadly intent, creating a barrage of new ways to kill and to maim. The wounded faces that came out of that war were so distorted and so savaged that a new science emerged, plastic surgery. That's where it came from. So that the maimed might have a chance at some kind of face. For Americans, this is Veterans Day. Our counterparts in the UK have another name for it. It's called Remembrance Day. And both names are important. It's important to remember with Thanksgiving the sacrifice of veterans of our armed forces. It's also important to remember the tremendous cost of war, not just financially, but in terms of people, in terms of lives lost. Poppies were among the first flowers that grew over the freshly turned graves of the soldiers of World War I. And there are many poems and songs that commemorate that war, but perhaps the most haunting is one by Canadian physician and soldier John McCrae, written in 1915 after he had to bury yet another friend. It's entitled In Flanders Field. This was the poem that forever connected the poppy to the high sacrifice of war. Maybe you had to memorize it in school. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row. They mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard among the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. This weekend you may see people wearing a red poppy on their lapel as a symbol of remembrance. And when you see that, I would ask that you take time to pause and to remember. World War I was supposed to be the war that ended all wars. Instead, it became a numbered war. World War I, to be followed by World War II. And we are still holding our breath to see if there will be a World War III. One author dubbed World War I as the war that ended peace. And yet it is peace that we seek. That's one of the reasons we are here today. But there are other reasons we're here today. And I want to thank George Morgan, who months ago pointed out to me that Veterans Day would land on a Sunday. But in looking at the church calendar, I also knew that other events would be landing on this particular Sunday, like our Celebration Sunday. It's a time when we at Holy Comforter mark our own harvest time, returning a portion of the gifts of God from the people of God. And I have loved the stories I've been hearing from our people about how they have seen Jesus at work in their lives, transforming them more and more into the likeness of God, the giver. God, the giver. And y'all, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about changed hearts. Bishop Ben Hayes put it this way: it's not, I'm coming here to get something. It's, I'm here to become something. You see the difference? It's not, I'm coming here to get something. I'm here to become something. And we come to church for what we can become. Basically, the likeness of Jesus. The likeness of Jesus. So that when people see us, they see Jesus. And Lord, that is worth celebrating. Not just today, but every day. Now, y'all, I know this past week has been a rough one for our nation, and I'm not talking about this past Tuesday. I'm talking about Wednesday. I'm talking about the deaths of so many innocent lives in yet another mass shooting. Should we just keep our flag perpetually at half-staff? I'm talking about the devastation faced by our fellow citizens in California from yet another wildfire. The numbers are staggering. And I'm talking about what I witnessed by spending a couple of days in Albany, Georgia, where our diocesan convention just concluded. Last month, we here in the Augusta area, we were spared the brunt of Hurricane Michael. Albany wasn't. Albany is located just 3 hours from the coast, the Gulf Coast, that is. Michael came in there as a Category 3 hurricane just a month ago, October 10th. Just a month ago. We've kind of forgotten that. But as you are driving into Albany, you can see dozens and dozens of pecan groves. And that's part of their economy. The pecan groves, where the trees have been tossed around and splintered. Trees that are still lying on houses. You'll see blue tarp covering the roofs of homes and businesses, if you can find the businesses, because so much of the signage has just been blown away. So much of the fronts had just collapsed. Debris was beginning to be collected, and it stood feet high. Now, I know most anybody in anything is taller than I am. But this debris was like twice my height and more. More than once, I had to do some fancy driving in order to avoid another tree or parts of a tree that were coming down on the highway, even as late as yesterday afternoon. I was driving down at the speed limit, and suddenly there was a huge limb that had just been blown. If there had not been this lane open, I would have run smack dab into it. Pam Vanskoy, who's there, is nodding. You saw the same thing. Still there. Still there. The bishop told us that there was a discussion among diocesan staff whether or not to move the convention because of the destruction. But the mayor of Albany said, come, come. We need your presence. It was a nice way of saying, we need your money. But that's okay. That's okay. She was there Friday morning to give us a personal welcome. And that's what I saw in Albany. Welcome. And in that glad and generous spirit, like we hear in the book of Acts, in that glad and generous spirit, I saw Jesus. And I was especially surprised to see Jesus at the breakfast bar at the Hilton Garden Inn yesterday morning. Now, like the other delegates, I was in a hurry to get a bite, check out, make my way back to the convention center. But first, I had to get by a warm and effusive kitchen manager who wanted to take care of my needs. And this woman had the best smile. The best smile. She reminded me of Papa in The Shack. And if you've read that book, then you know what I'm talking about. I was met by Papa. And the cook behind the counter made the best grits I have ever eaten. I'm telling you, I could go back tomorrow for those grits. And I loved his name for them. He said, I call them Georgia ice cream. I call them heaven. So as I'm sitting there trying to get my stuff done, I thanked the manager for her warm hospitality, because it really was amazing. Made all the more incredible because I had a peek into what her city had been through, is still going through. And I asked her how she managed to be so joyous, so gracious, first thing in the morning. Guys, you do not want to see me first thing in the morning. My dogs don't want to see me first thing in the morning unless I'm fed them. But she had this infectious joy. And not only did she have it, she made sure it was instilled in her employees as well. So everybody who walked in this small area, there were only 3 and 4 employees, they all just radiated love, radiated joy. When I asked her about it, she said, and listen, when it comes to serving our guests, I tell my people, you have to be what they are not. You have to be what they are not. And it was then I realized I really was talking to God. Papa was right there. And I realized I had that intersection that I have been looking for today, for all the different things we had to mark today. What's the antidote to war? What's the antidote to violence? What's the antidote to never-ending disasters? What's the answer to the shrill, hateful, hurtful debates that occur in our country? Beloved, it all starts by just acting like Jesus. That's how it starts. We act like Jesus. It starts by realizing that we have to be what they are not. We have to be what they are not. And as we do that, not when, as we do that, then swords will be turned into plowshares. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. And please, dear God, neither shall they learn war anymore. In Christ's name.
Amen.